I think first and foremost it's important that when you're choosing an attorney to represent you in a domestic violence case that you have someone who understands the statute. There are several different types of domestic violence injunctions. There is an injunction for protection against domestic violence, and that is an injunction between you and a domestic partner, someone you've lived with. But there's injunctions for repeat violence, which would be when you've been a victim of violence with someone who's not a domestic partner, but there's been 2 violent incidents. You have to know that there's also a dating violence, domestic violence injunction, and there's also an injunction for stalking. So the variety of injunctions all have different statutory requirements in order to meet them and be granted an injunction. You also need to find someone who really understands the process, because in domestic violence it melds with family law, but it is not family law. There's a lot of criminal element to it. You have to understand that there may be a felony conviction on the other side of that injunction. There may be a misdemeanor on the other side of that injunction, and you have to understand, you have to have an attorney who can understand how that plays into the process. I think it's also important that you have an attorney who's sensitive to the plight of what that particular survivor is going through, because it's very easy to look at a victim of domestic violence, not understand the cycle of control and violence, and not understand where they're coming from when they're overly upset or they're angry at you and they're misdirecting their anger. Because for a lot of victims, this is going to be the first time they've been introduced to the civil litigation process. Most of the time it's the first time they've been introduced to the criminal litigation process. And you need someone who understands the correlation between the two and understands the elements of the statute in order to get you through that process as quickly as possible, as painlessly as possible, so that you can move on with your life knowing that you've been granted an injunction for protection to keep you safe from that abuser.